All right, welcome everybody. I guess we'll go ahead and get started following Lindley's rule. We'll start at 12:03. I want to welcome you all to virtual Munch and Learn today. It is a rainy day out here, of course, and the garden that everybody wants to know about the tulips. And I think we've got tulips blooming, but I think we're about a week to 10 days out on, depending on what the weather does on our peak on this. So anyway, come back. It's ever changing, and come back often. We many of you know our second shipment of tulips was mixed up. The tractor trailer truck pulled in, and we had a skid, a whole pallet of different kinds of tulips, early, mids, and lates, about 25,000 tulips. And when they pulled into the Dixon lot, the whole truck hit a bump, and they didn't have the skid strapped down from their last shipment. So we opened the back of the truck, and there were literally bulbs scattered from one end to the other. So we have taken all of those bulbs and mixed them all up, and we planted those at the end of the Venus LA by the Kaneko sculpture in the lawn area. So it's going to be beautiful. I think it's kind of indicative of 2020. It was kind of a mixed up year, but just like this year, we're all coming together and everything's going to be fine. So anyway, it's going to be a beautiful display. So anyway, come out, take pictures, post them on social media. It really draws people out. We can have 1,000 people on a Saturday easily if people help get the word out. So we plant them for everybody to enjoy. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, bring your friends, bring your neighbors, come often and see the tulips. We've only planted probably somewhere around 50,000 this year, and we've done as many as 250,000. So, but anyway, it's still a beautiful show, and it's a welcome reprieve after all we've been through from last year. I think everybody is ready for spring. All right, with that, I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and go ahead and get started with the presentation. Okay, I think this is it. Share.
You turn that up.
All right. Am I sharing my screen now? Can someone chime in and let me know if we're sharing the screen?
It's as high as I can go. I could
Your
put my
screen is being shared.
You're good.
Okay, okay, perfect. Well, first of all, I just want to thank some of my colleagues here at the Dixon, Norma Montesi, Margarita Sandino, Kristen Rambo, and Chantal Drake, because, all this technology stuff, I should know more about it than I do, but I always struggle through, and it seems like it should be the same thing every time. But so hopefully this technology will work and we can make it through this presentation. But anyway, it takes a village, I guess. All right. So and also I want to thank the plant sale volunteers, and that group is led by Carolyn Brown and Linda Edens, and we call them the Mad Potters. And without the Mad Potters, the Dixon plant sale would not be possible. They spend countless hours getting plants ready, potting plants, propagating plants, ordering plants, putting together information about the different plants. And actually, Carolyn Brown was responsible for putting together the PowerPoint that we're about to view now. So thank you to the plant sale volunteers that make this all possible. So you can see the dates there. Open to the public on Friday, April 16th and Saturday the 17th. We have a members only preview sale on the 15th, and a lot of stuff will go on the 15th, a lot of the unusual stuff and things that we have limited numbers of. So it's just an extra perk for your Dixon membership. So we will have memberships available there if you're not a member, but hopefully you all are members. So anyway, this is the preview party. It's not a party. I can't say that. It's just in my brain that it's a party, but it's the preview sale is what we're calling it. And but you notice it's by appointment only. And I think that information is on the Dixon website. I think Kristen has put that up there. So there's a way to register for one of the slots to come in. We're having socially distanced. We're going to make people wear masks, and we're going to try to do this as safe as possible. But we definitely wanted to have our sale. So anyway, more details at the Dixon website on how you sign up and all of that. So it's obviously it's a month away from the plant sale. So we decided we would have 2 Munch and Learns because there's so much material, and So we've divided it into 2 sections. And so there you go. There's the links to where you sign up. The plant list will be on the Dixon website after the 1st of April. So initially the Dixon plant sale was a wildflower plant sale. And in the early 80s, when the sale first came into being, it was a lot of native wildflowers were not available. And we were in the process of developing the woodland garden, which needed a lot of wild woodland plants. And so it was a wildflower sale historically. And as many of you know, the Dixon much of it is shaded. We have some sunny areas like the South Lawn and the Cutting Garden, but a large portion of it's shaded, and that's due to Hugo Dixon. He carved this garden out of a hardwood forest, and so he was very careful and respectful of the trees, and we've continued that tradition here at the Dixon. So a lot of the Dixon is shaded, so we have a fair number of shade perennials that we are offering. So it has evolved. It's not just native plants. But here's some of the original native plants that we have, and we'll have them in the sale this year. This is the just the plain old-fashioned native columbine. This is the wild species, the canadensis, and it is an interesting hummingbird plant. And the little pendulous flowers hang down, and the leaves sort of are a blue-green and almost have a shamrock look to them. There is a pest that comes after this plant. It's called the columbine leaf miner, and it attacks no other plant other than this one, and it doesn't seem to attack any of the cultivars that are grown, only the wild species. But what I recommend doing is when it gets riddled with that, if you can't stand the look of it, you can actually take a string trimmer or cutters or loppers and just lop it down. This plant will self-sow where it's happy, and it'll make a big solid mass. And so it would almost be sensible to just come in and you can take a string trimmer and trim the top off of it, and the new bright blue growth will come back out and it will not be affected. The leaf miner has a small window in which it does its thing. So, but it's a great plant, and I wouldn't let that stop you from growing it. A great nectar plant, and these pendulous flowers. The Aquilegia canadensis, native over much of the eastern United States. Another plant that we are known for is the Dixon strain foam flower. This is not a species, this is a seed strain, which what that means is it's highly variable. And if you look at this slide, you can see some of the leaves have netting on the and black markings on the leaves. Some are glossy, some are matte, some have no black markings. So it's a highly variable seed strain. And it performs really, really well in the Mid-South. And there's several garden designers and folks who specify the Dixon strain foam flower. Today, so many of the plants have been hybridized and selected, and we have cultivars. And it's kind of a rare thing that you get a seed strain sold at a nursery. But I like that variability. And the plant breeders have had a heyday with this variability too. They call the term phenotypic plasticity, but basically that just means that it's a highly variable plant as it naturally grows. The white flowers in the spring, as the name implies, are like foam, and they can be painted in huge masses. And the seed originally came from somewhere on the other side of the Tennessee River, is where the seed actually originally came from. But we've been growing it here for since the early 80s here at the Dixon. So it's a great plant that we always have a fair number of at the plant sale. And it's one of those plants that in the spring you can really never have too much. Another plant that was associated with that wildflower sale is the Phlox divaricata, the wild blue phlox or wild sweet William. And it's fragrant. It's a wonderful plant. It makes you very happy in the spring. It combines well with daffodils, especially some of the paler colored daffodils. It is a great little woodland plant. It'll self-sow, again, where it's happy. And so, and it'll take a little bit more sun, and I think it flowers a little better in a little bit more sun, but it will need protection from the hot afternoon sun in Memphis. But wild sweet William, this cultivar is called Blue Moon. We often have several other cultivars as well. But just a great plant that you can't have too much of. The biggest problem with it is you plant this, and you got to be careful because it doesn't necessarily, it dies back down to this basal foliage after it flowers. And a lot of times groundskeepers and the people you hired to garden at your house may not know this plant, and they may mistake it for a weed and weed it out. We've even had that issue before here at the Dixon. But what a welcome sight in the spring with these blue flowers. Never spreads to be invasive, and but it will self-sow if it's happy and you don't use too much of that hardwood mulch. The celandine poppy is another woodland wildflower, and you can see the poppy-like buds here, the celandine poppy or woods poppy. It's best grown in shade to full shade, and you know, it likes some good humus-rich soil, good woodland soil, and it'll be very, very happy. Again, it will self-sow, and it blooms at about the same time that the foam flower and the wild blue phlox are blooming, pretty close bloom time. So anyway, it's a very nice plant that we have in our woodland garden that we've propagated here at the Dixon and grown for decades. So another one, as we were a wildflower plant sale. But we don't only grow wildflowers anymore. We grow European species, Asian species. This is an Asian species of the ginger, and it's evergreen, whereas our native ginger, Asarum canadensis, is not evergreen. It dies back. But this stays evergreen in foliage. You might have to cut some of the foliage back after a hard winter like we just had, but glossy green heart-shaped leaves with the mottling. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And here's the flower here. The flowers are kind of born underneath, just like just like our native wild ginger. They're born close to the ground. They're three-petaled, and they're pollinated by beetles. So it's pretty amazing that Mother Nature puts these right at the ground where the beetles can go in, and they actually, studies have been done, and our native ginger actually exudes a hormone that attracts the beetles to pollinate it. So Mother Nature is so fascinating how it does that. But you're not really growing it for the flowers. You pretty much have to get down on your knees and lift up the foliage to see the flowers. But it is kind of a novel thing that you can wow your friends with if you want to show them. Astilbes like a little bit of moisture. The pumula is one of the lower growing astilbes. It's almost a ground cover, and then it sends up these spikes. Some of them are taller. Some of them get up to 30 inches even with the bloom spikes. The Astilbe chinensis is the best one for us. It tends to hold up best in our heat, but again, it likes evenly moist soil. So you don't want to grow it under a maple tree, for example, where it's really, really dry. Anyway, superba, Taketi superba is a larger plant. It gets maybe 4 feet high. It blooms in early summer. It blooms actually when the hydrangeas bloom. And if you can imagine a macrophylla or a big mop head hydrangea blooming juxtaposed against those spikes coming up, and they both like a little even moisture, so they could be good companion plants with some of your hostas. And I know there's a huge hosta following here in the Mid-South. And then there's a lot of new cultivars. This is one Delft lace. It's a Dutch cultivar, and as you know, with all the flower bulbs, we have lots of Dutch friends. But the flowers are fragrant. It's a little bit lacier, and aptly named Delft lace. Delft is a town in the Netherlands, and this is a Dutch nurseryman selected this, and it works well for us. Astilbe Delft lace. It was a chance seedling in a nursery in Holland. Many of you know the Bletilla, or maybe you don't, but if you know Bletilla, it's one of the easiest to grow terrestrial orchids, which basically means it's an orchid that grows in the soil and not in a treetop or as an epiphyte. They grow from these pseudobulbs in the ground. This one's a little harder to grow than the Bletilla striata. The Bletilla striata is very similar to this, except for it has pink flowers. And then there's a white form of that as well. But this is the yellow form, and it's beautiful. Look at you can look at the foliage, typical orchid type bloom. The strap-like foliage is attractive. It's in midsummer that it blooms. And it has 3 to 5 flowers per little cluster. And look at the purple highlights in the yellow, just really attractive plant. You need to give it fairly moist, rich soil. It could take morning sun, but it needs protection from the hot afternoon sun. This is from Sichuan, China. And this particular Chinese butterfly cultivar is supposed to be the most vigorous of the ochracea Bletilla. So if you're looking for a color other than the purple or the white, this is the one to get, Chinese butterfly. Perfectly outdoor hardy, by the way. A plant that every shade garden in Memphis should have is the variegated Solomon seal. About the only downside to this is that it goes dormant in the winter, but the foliage stays clean and neat. It has these little bell-shaped flowers. We've always had this plant in the sale, but we have a lot of new and unusual Polygonatums. So the variegated one is Polygonatum odoratum variegatum. Okay, this is Polygonatum odoratum ruby slippers, and it's called ruby slippers for this red stem that it has, and it seems to be as vigorous as the variegated Solomon seal. I think it's a pretty good performer. We've planted some here on the grounds and it's formed a nice little clump. It makes these nice little colonies, easy to share with your friends. But again, these flowers, just like on the variegated one, are under the stem and they open up. This is a Japanese plant. It'll get about maybe 2 feet tall. Excuse me. It'll get maybe 2 feet tall. Really nice plant. Again, it's not evergreen. None of the Polygonatums are evergreen. Some of the plants that are called Solomon seal, which we'll get to in a minute, they can be evergreen, but these are all deciduous little guys. This is a dainty little one that I just love. It's great with miniature hostas, and it forms a nice little clump. This is Polygonatum humile, which is a cute little form, maybe 6 to 8 inches tall. And it seems to, where it's happy, it'll form nice little, it's a rhizomatous little plant that'll form nice little colonies as well. A great little woodland garden plant for the front edge of a woodland pathway or border. All right, notice the genus on all of these has been the Polygonatum, right? And that's the true Solomon seals. This is an evergreen Solomon seal, but the common name is misleading. It's not a true Solomon seal. Disporopsis pernyi. And we started growing this form here at the Dixon whenever I arrived, and we've planted a lot of it. And it is a real nice clump former. It's as easy to grow as monkey grass, and it is evergreen, attractive, maybe 20 inches high. These arching stems. There are actually 2 forms that we have here at the Dixon, and all of that we're selling in the plant sale is propagated from the grounds. But we sort of had some confusion on the labels, and so we're not sure which form is the Bill Baker form, but some of it is just straight pernyi, and some of it is a form called Bill Baker form. And so, but anyway, just a great plant, hard to find in the nursery industry, but becoming more and more common. But I can't say enough good things about this Asian native. It's just a really superior plant, and the fact that it's evergreen carries you through the winter when a lot of things are dormant in your woodland garden or shade garden. So if you're not growing this and you have shade in Memphis, it is a real winner, and it'll form nice clumps, and you'll be able to share it with your friends, just like we are digging it from the Dixon grounds and sharing it with you. Never a thug, never invasive. Just a really nice plant that grows really dense, and it grows so dense it kind of will even smother out the weeds. But a real winner for us in Memphis, a home run. We love the Epimediums. There are several different Epimediums. The one you see mostly around here is a yellow form called Sulfurium. And Carolyn Brown, who I thanked earlier for all of her hard work on this plant sale, is kind of an Epimedium aficionado. She collects Epimediums, and so she seeks out some more unusual ones that have worked well in her garden. This is Epimedium Domino, which has bigger flowers and really attractive. The These are Asian plants. They are also evergreen and form nice little ground cover mats. They're touted for being a great plant for dry shade. And what we find is a lot of them will tolerate dry shade, but they're a little happier if they're given a little moisture. They'll grow a little better. This is offered at a Plants Delight nursery, which is a mail order nursery from Tony Avent's nursery. He sells this for a little small plant for $29. So we'll be offering it for much less at our plant sale. But anyway, it's a very floriferous hybrid from Darrell Probst, who introduced us to a lot of new epimediums. This is Farfugium. It used to be Ligularia. Some people call it the tractor seat plant. If you know anything about old tractors, they used to have these seats that were contoured to your backside and would fit. Anyway, so these leaves kind of resemble the old tractor seats. So some people call it the tractor seat plant. But it was formerly known as Ligularia till the botanist decided it was a Farfugium. But this needs some moisture, moist soil, a good kind of that perfect soil, moist but well drained. But if you have a spot that it's happy, it will grow and thrive and be really, really a nice plant. The leaves will eventually get nipped by the frost and come back out every year. But real glossy green leaves, and as the name implies, Giganteum, these leaves can get up to maybe 12 inches across. So it's a great texture plant for the woodland garden. You can contrast it with some caryxes or maybe some thin-bladed hostas, but it is a fabulous plant with a big, bold presence with its large leaves. I find, just like the Ligularias, if it's happy and it likes you, it will perform very, very well. If it doesn't really just take off for you, you may have it in the wrong spot. But it also has these flowers, which I think they're okay, but that's not the reason to grow it. The reason to grow it is this beautiful, beautiful glossy green foliage. Hostas have sort of really, really taken off in the past 25 years. Hostas were kind of on the fringes, and there were hosta societies and hosta groups whenever I first started into horticulture in the mid 80s. And so with all the hybridization, we've lost some of the wild species. Most of them are native to Japan. This is Hosta venusta, which is a little diminutive hosta. It's very robust. It's green, and it's a nice little edging plant because it's only maybe 8 to 10 inches tall, and a nice little spreader. It forms nice, robust clumps. So venusta is kind of hard to find and sort out among all the new hybrids and some of which are really, really great. But this is a really good little grower that's hard to find. We like to use it in little trough gardens or rock gardens. It works really well in the shade rock garden because it is smaller. Works great in pots as well. And we're pleased to offer a fair number of Hosta venustas this year. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Lenten roses that are blooming now, the hellebores as they're called. There are so many new hellebores. It's another plant that sort of originally back in the early 80s, there weren't many hostas out there, and they didn't present very well in containers, and so you had to really talk people into buying them. But they're evergreen perennials that like the shade. They're, believe it or not, they're in the buttercup family, not the buttercups you probably think of. A lot of people think daffodils are buttercups, but the buttercup family has all these stamens, so that's how you know that family. So it's in the Ranuncula Ace family, which is the buttercup family. And there's so many new hybrids out there now. This one is a sterile cross. This is Rihanna's Ruby, so the breeding was for a dark red. Another thing they're breeding for are flowers that stand upright. A lot of times the flowers would sort of nod, and especially on the old Helleborus orientalis, the flowers were beautiful, but you'd almost have to pick them up to see them because they would nod. So breeders have been hard at work taking some of the other cultivars and crossing them to get flowers that stand up and double flowers. And there are a whole host of hellebores, and I love them all. They are wonderful plants, blooming at a great time of the year. Here's some of the parents. This is the Helleborus corsicus, which is native to the Mediterranean island of Majorca. And here's Niger, and Niger is native to Greece and to parts of Europe. And this is Niger is known as the Christmas rose. But these are two of the parents that created the Rihanna's ruby. So anyway, nice plant. This is these are almost evergreen like holly leaves, and it's tricky to grow because it's native to a Mediterranean region where it's summer dry and winter wet. So interestingly enough, if you read a little bit about the Niger hellebore called the Christmas rose, in the Middle Ages, people would strew this plant over the floor, the flowers of it, and it was supposed to drive out evil influences. So that's a little bit of a Middle Ages folklore there. This is the Helleborus niger emerging from the winter in Greece, and what a beautiful place. So there it is in the wild. But we've come a long way with breeding these plants for sure. Another plant that has been selected and bred for a lot are the Heucheras. If you talk to folks from the UK, a lot of them will say Heucheras or with that brogue. But Heucheras, this one that I'm looking at here is Dale strain, and it's a seed strain like our Tiarella. And Dale strain is highly variable. You can get some Dale strain has. Actually, both of these are Dale strains, sorry. Some has the netting in the leaf, and this is just green in the middle of the leaf. And again, the plant breeders call this phenotypic plasticity, which that just means that there's highly variable expression on the leaves. So it gives plant breeders a lot to choose from. So anyway, this plant has been bred a lot. And selected for a lot. A lot of it was done on the West Coast initially, producing all these Heuchera cultivars. And a lot of them were real duds for us. They would come here and they wouldn't hold up in our clay soil and our heat and our humidity. And a lot of this was done on the West Coast. Terra Nova Nursery was doing a lot of it. And then people discovered that if they used our native Heuchera villosa, which the botanist term villosa just means hairy, and you can certainly see all the hairs on the leaf of this one. And they learned that if you use villosa, the plant will hold up in the South. And so they started breeding them and giving them names like Sweet Tea and Alabama Sunrise, and names to let you know that they were good for the South. And those would really, really hold up for us. And so there's been just a plethora of breeding on these plants. And they've given us these wonderful cultivars with the original cultivars had white, and now they have these Heucheras that have like the chatterboxes that they have, the cultivar chatterbox and some of the others that have colored blooms. Still, again, you can see the resemblance to the Americana leaf here. Here's some that have some dark burgundy leaves. There's just a whole host, and we have quite a few to offer. And most of ours are villosa hybrids, so they're going to hold up and perform well. This is wild berry, look at that, and then berry smoothie. These work well in containers, and they're quasi-evergreen if you have a mild winter. And so having that foliage late into the fall is really nice. Berry smoothie and wild berry are a couple we'll offer. And then let me tell you a little bit about the Heucherellas. You may recall the Dixon strain foam flower, which is Tiarella. They took the Heucheras, and the Tiarellas are related. They're both in the same family. They have different genera, but they're in the same family. So if you notice the X on this, the X is at the front of the name. That means it is an intergeneric hybrid. So as all that means is they took two different genuses of plants. They took the Heuchera and they took the Tiarella and they crossed them. And what a clever name, Heucherella. So anyway, and they've selected for bloom time and stuff like this. This Pink Revolution is supposed to be a blooming machine. It prefers afternoon shade, and it'll take a little bit deeper shade as well. It's about maybe 12 to 15 inches tall, and it's just a blooming machine. So it has the foliage characteristics of the Heuchera and the blooming characteristics of the Tiarella. And some of these are actually superior to the straight genera of either. So, and look at this nice edge on here. That's as nice as a caladium leaf almost. So yes, they have blooms, but the foliage is the main reason to grow them. So, all right, moving on, another native. You know, the Tennessee state flower is the iris, but there's only a couple of iris that are actually native to Tennessee. I think the copper iris, and this is the dwarf crested iris. This is a little diminutive thing. It's maybe 6 to 8 inches tall, has wonderful blue flowers. I wished it bloomed for longer, but it does grace the plant in early May or late April, and just a wonderful little iris that every garden has a space for it, and it forms a nice little clump, and the foliage is kind of attractive over time. So what a nice little plant, Iris cristata. And then we also have the white form of this. This is an introduction by Tennessee nurseryman Don Shadow, our good friend, and he introduced this one called Tennessee White, and it is a white form of our native Iris cristata. I mean, every little woodland garden and shade garden should have a spot to tuck in one of these little gems. I just love them. They can't help but make you smile when you see them flower. All right, the meadow roost, Thalictrum. The Thalictrums need a little bit of shade here. This is a Tom Pellet favorite plant. This is yellow meadow rue, and it has this sort of glaucous blue-green foliage, and then it has the yellow flowers. It kind of does well as a backdrop plant or almost as a see-through plant, a little bit denser than some of the other Thalictrums, but this is the yellow meadow rue. Has the nice attribute of being deer resistant. Anyway, it'll take some sun, but you definitely have to give it protection from the hot afternoon sun, and it'll thrive in a little bit of shade. So that's the Thalictrum. This is tall. Like I said, this is about 3 foot tall. So not as tall as some of the other Thalictrums, but still tall. I thought we had another Thalictrum to show you, but maybe it'll come up in just a bit. As I mentioned, we started out with our plant sale. It used to be a wildflower plant sale. And as a teenager, I worked for a rare plant nursery here in Memphis, 4-5's Nursery. So I kind of had that in my DNA. And so we've shifted to cover a lot of unusual plants. We like to use the plant sale as a venue to introduce things like Edgeworthia and some of the other woody plants that we're going to talk about, the evergreen Solomon seal, some of the other things that we've sort of introduced to the Memphis market through this plant sale. But we're always seeking out rare and unusual perennials, and we like to offer to you the ones that do well. And this is a little Jack in the Pulpit, and we have several rare Jack in the Pulpits. Here's our native Jack in the Pulpit that's native to Tennessee, but these aren't your typical native Jacks that we have. So I'll show you some of them. This is a Japanese cobra lily, and we work really hard to import these from Japan. We have to get a phytosanitary on them, which means they have to be inspected to make sure we're not bringing any pests. They have to go through a little quarantine period, and so it's a pleasure to offer these. But look at this on the spath has this little tail on it, this Japanese cobra lily, and the foliage is very, very attractive. Anyway, this is, I guess this is for luring some sort of an insect into it. Probably has a very specific pollinator. These are Asian jacks, and this is Cushianum, the Japanese cobra lily. No, that's not really the cobra lily. I think it has a different common name. I think it might be the mouse tail, but I'm not sure. But anyway, Cushianum is the one with the long tail. So just remember that. Here's the true cobra lily here, and these things are looking great. They're actually in flower now, and these things are big. I mean, the blooms on these are really, really big, and they stay sort of tight like a fist. And so interestingly enough, it probably has some very select pollinator. But this is definitely a novelty and a conversation piece. It'll get up to maybe 20 inches high, maybe 2 feet if you're lucky. It's one of the earliest jacks to emerge from the ground. And I mean, they almost look like they're from another planet. But anyway, just a great, great plant that we will offer big husky plants this year of, because as you know, we didn't have the garden fair last year. So a lot of the plants are going to be really, really big. They've been up potted and well taken care of and are more robust and bigger than they were last year. Oh, here's our other thalictrum. This is a dwarf one. This is a little diminutive one, maybe 6 inches tall, that every garden has a place for. And it spreads to form nice clumps. There used to be a garden writer here in Memphis, Ann Blecken, and she wrote for the Commercial Appeal for a while. And she would always share this plant with people who would visit her garden because it's a nice little spreader. Never invasive, has the foliage like the other meadow ruse, nice blue-green foliage, and these flowers are really, really nice. This is another one from Asia. This is Cusianum, and really nice plant. We looked at some of the Solomon seals. These are the fairy bells, which are similar to the Solomon seals. The flowers are a little bit bigger, and we're pleased to offer these Asian woodland natives as well. How about this one? This is a Memphis plant. This is not really hardy, zone hardy for us, certainly not zone hardy down to the 1 degrees we had, but fortunately these were tucked away in the greenhouse. But the foliage sort of has this sheen to it, and the back side of the leaves looks like a velvet painting. So it's called Velvet Elvis. It's a tender perennial. South of here it would come back, but here you're going to have to either take cuttings or something for the winter, but it blooms for a long time. It's they look great year round, and the foliage is nice. Anyway, Velvet Elvis. And then this, yes, this is a salvia. You're saying, wait a minute, we're talking about shade plants. Why would a salvia be listed as a shade plant? Well, this is an introduction of Plants Delight Nursery that Tony Avent circulated in the trade. It is a yellow sage that is a woodland sage. So it's a Japanese plant, and it'll get 2 foot tall, but it has these yellow flowers in the shade. Really a neat plant. It'll take morning sun, but it has to have afternoon shade. I think it does best when it gets a little bit more shade. It's great for a woodland garden. Give it some rich humusy soil and it'll do well. I think Plants Delights offers it for around $20 a plant. And so we'll have it for a much better price point here at the plant sale. And because we've been growing them for a while, they'll be bigger plants probably than you would get through the mail order. Here's a shredded umbrella leaf. This looks like I don't know how many know the podophyllum or the mayapple. This looks not related to the mayapple, but it looks a lot like a mayapple. And they call it shredded umbrella leaf because if you notice, this is peltate, which means it's a leaf where it's attached in the center like an umbrella. And so hence the name shredded umbrella plant. Really a novel plant. It's not even related to the barberry. I mean to the mayapple, but it looks a lot like it. Mayaple's in the barberry family. So it makes a nice spreading rhizome. It's interesting when it first emerges. A nice plant for the woodland garden, and another special plant that like the Erasemias or the jacks is really impressive. All right, we have some mix of evergreen and deciduous hardy ferns. We get help from the Fern Society here in Memphis, and I noticed there were several members of the Fern Society that were logged on here. So, we try to seek out ferns. Ferns have been a Dixon tradition for a long time. We've taught fern propagation workshops here at the Dixon, and so we have a mix of evergreen and deciduous that are all do well in our area. This is the maidenhair fern. This is our southern maidenhair. And the trick to growing maidenhairs, they go dormant. These are not evergreen. But the trick to them is give them good drainage. They'll take a little bit more sun than you think. And lime, lots of lime. So if you put a little bit of dolomitic lime a couple times a year, it will reward you with bountiful growth, and it's just a really good little plant, a dainty and lacy thing. It spreads slow, and you can give it more sun than you think, but if you put it in direct sun, it'll tell you because the tips of the leaf will scorch. But I think out of the adiantums, of which this is the southern maidenhair, I think the northern maidenhair is superior. It has these 5 fingers, almost like digits. It holds its fronds late into the fall. Again, it likes lime and will take a little bit more sun than you think. But love this plant. You could tuck it away in your shady garden, along with the iris that we were talking about earlier. It would work well with that. And then we have some unusual lady ferns. This is called Lady in Red, kind of a novelty because the stems are red. But other than that, it's pretty much standard lady fern type habit. Not going to be evergreen with those red stems. And here's another form of the lady fern, and this one has lime green foliage. So some interesting lady ferns. Lady ferns perform well, but again, they're not evergreen. Another non-evergreen fern that works well with a lot of those heucheras that we were showing earlier, it also works well with black monkey grass or black mondo grass, is this the Japanese painted fern. And the cultivar we have called Regal Red. And we've offered some others like Godzilla, but this is a good performer, has this sort of silvery texture to it, really nice plant. And the center stems on that can be even black. We've got the shield fern. I think it's quasi-evergreen most years. If you're going to grow one fern in Memphis, it's almost planted too much in Memphis. It's the autumn fern, and this is the cultivar Brilliance, and it can get up to 3 feet tall. It has this coppery new growth, and it's evergreen, and dependably so. We come through and cut them back about this time of year when the new ones are emerging. But again, the Dixon is associated with ferns, and we like to be, a lot of them grow well here, and we have quite a few autumn fern. Tassel Fern, this was actually used to be sold as a house plant in a greenhouse grown plant, and people started experimenting with it. We realized that it was hardy out of doors here, and so it's quasi evergreen as well. And in a cold winter it may die back, but a really nice addition to the woodland garden. A little bit more fickle than some of the other ferns like the autumn fern, but still I would consider it moderately easy to grow. Here's remote wood fern. I think it is, it's a real drought tolerant fern. So you think of ferns as needing water, so that's one of the key things of it. But it can get up 2 or 3 feet tall if it's happy. All right, we have just a few more minutes left here, and I'm going to wrap up with one of my favorite plants, so I hope I don't talk too much about it, but maybe we'll do a presentation later on native azaleas. One of our collections here at the Dixon, that living plant collections that we actively seek out, are native azaleas. I absolutely love native azaleas, and native azaleas have 5 stamens, if you care to count, but that's how they differ from rhododendrons. They're all true rhododendrons. They're all botanically classified as a rhododendron, but the native azaleas lose their leaves, where most rhododendrons that you think of are evergreen. There are 15, 16 species of native azaleas, and we are blessed in the southeastern United States with about 14 of them. There's one that grows on the West Coast in southern Oregon, northern California, called Rhododendron occidental. We're not going to talk about that one, but we'll talk about some of the other species. Now, a species is a plant that is as it is growing in the wild, and these were seed collected or propagated from cuttings, and we have a really good source on these, and we're proud to offer these hard to find plants. So everybody thinks of native azaleas as blooming in the spring only, and the most commonly grown ones are the chinensis and the austrana, which we'll look at in just a minute. But if you look, you can get bloom times. I always thought that the prunifolium was the latest, and usually it's late July and early August for us. but there are just a whole host of colors and bloom times, and these are all wild species. These have really not been hybridized by man. They've just been selected from the wild. So we're pleased to offer some of those. Let's get into some of them. The blooms, a lot of people say look like honeysuckle, and this is one of the more common ones grown in this area. This is the chinensis. Very, very sweet smelling, fragrant, the Piedmont azalea. Very nice. Look at the pink buds. And anyway, multi-stem shrub, maybe 8 to 10 feet if it's happy and you're lucky, but just extremely fragrant. The flowers are held on these trusses like rhododendrons, but they're long tubular flowers, and you can look at the floral sex parts stick way out. This was taken here at the Dixon. Unfortunately, a big tree fell on this many years back. It's actually regrown and looks really good. We have several of these in this quadrant of the woodland garden. This is Ostrinum, which is a yellow one known as the Florida flame azalea. And it is a profuse flower and a very good one. Again, it's early, like the chinensis, but we just love these. I'm hoping to get over into western Tennessee and eastern North Carolina when these are in flower to document some of them this year. And I'm trying to get a group together. It's kind of hard to do with all the COVID restrictions, but I want to get over and log some of them and take photographs, and then possibly come back and collect some seeds. There's a lot of crossing going on because a lot of natural hybrids, God-made hybrids, or Mother Nature-made hybrids that occur where the bloom times overlap. This is the Oconee azalea. Again, these are tighter trusses here, kind of in an orange. Alabama mints. This is I'm questioning this photograph because Alabama mints usually has a yellow blotch on it most of the time. This may be chinensis again, but Alabama mints typically has a yellow blotch on it. So that's the Alabama native azalea, Alabama mints. This is the flame azalea, and it's native over in the Piedmont and is really, really a nice plant as well. See the trusses here, and if you want to count stamens, you can do that here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is flower starting to decline. This is a little bit more of an unusual one, Colmanii. We happen to offer that in the sale. These will be 3-gallon plants that we're offering, and some 1 gallons. This, as the name implies, this is the viscosum, and it's named so because of these sticky glandular hairs on it. This is the swamp azalea, so it'll take a little bit wetter feet. Tends to be not as big of a grower for me, but again, there's a lot of variation because these are wild grown plants, wild selected plants, not hybrids. And here's the arborescens, which is one of the big ones, as the name implies. Arborescens gets bigger. It's known as the smooth azalea, so it has no hairs. The viscosum has the glandular hairs, the smooth does not. And this is the latest in my mind, although that chart showed some others that bloomed later. This is the prunifolia, and this is the plumleaf azalea, and it's native down to Callaway Gardens. Near Callaway Gardens is the only place where this is found in the wild still. The only downshot to this one, it doesn't have the perfumey fragrance, the heady fragrance that some of the others offer, but it has an orange flower and it's blooming in July in a woodland garden. That's hard to beat. Here's a Cerulatum, which may be one of the later ones as well. A lot of smaller flowers, but more of them. And then we have these hybrids. Yes, there have been hybrids made, but they're still close to the wild ones. This is My Mary. Some of these were selected from wild plants. Look at those trusses here. Look at how tight that truss is. So we're gonna have Earl's Gold, Kate, Pat's Pink, some of these other ones, some of which I have not grown, but they all have the native azalea parentage, and they're gonna be just lovely. And we're gonna add some to our living collection so we can evaluate them further, but hard to find plants that we're proud to offer. Some more hybrids. Again, some of these you can see some of it, like you can see the chinensis in that one. But anyway, just superior forms. that have been wild selected, and some are natural hybrids and some have been hybridized by people. And then lastly, what shade garden would not be complete without the caladiums? We had a wonderful display last year. Last year, all the caladiums that were going to go in the plant sale were planted in our annual color beds. And so caladiums are nice because you don't have to depend on the flower. The foliage is good. The only downshot to them, you need to wait till the ground warms up to plant them. We planted the tubers right in the ground, and they seem to do just fine. So anyway, this is the formal gardens here at the Dixon with a variety. And these are not your average run-of-the-mill caladiums. We seek out the unusual ones. And anyway, they shut down in September, but nothing provides you with more color over a longer period of time. And some of these are sun tolerant. And if they're given adequate moisture, will do fine in sun or shade, which is a great thing at the Dixon, because quite often we have color beds that one side is in the shade and the other side is in full sun. And so we can, you can't match that with a lot of flowering plants, but you can with the caladiums. So we have lots of caladiums. They'll be bagged and ready for sale, ready to go out, plant out in your garden. So anyway, that's my presentation for today. I'll have part 2, which will cover sun perennials, shrubs, ground covers, and vines on April 7th. So I look forward to talking to you about those things. And go ahead and sign up for your spot at the plant sale.
Now go to the chat.
And I'm going to go to the chat and see if I can answer some questions with the last few minutes that I have. So let's see if I can figure out how to find the chat.
At the bottom. At the bottom.
Okay, chat. There we go.
Just come right up.
Okay, I've got some questions here. How do I make that bigger? Okay, here we go. All right, I guess I'll start from the top. Okay, Margarita has put, but some of you know Lindley, who those of you who are regulars here on Munch and Learn may know that Lindley has had some health issues, and she's doing great now. And there's a link that Margarita has put on the chat for you to go to check in on Lindley. Okay, Liz Manugian's here. Good morning, everyone. Good to have Liz with us. Okay, does anyone have a remote camera attached to their system? I don't know what that's about. Okay, hello, Liz. Okay. I don't know if there's many questions. There's just some comment here. Okay.
Bill, one of the questions is, what is the spread of the Farfugium Giganteum at maturity?
Farfugium, what is the spread of it? I would probably put them on 2-foot centers to make real thick mass of it eventually. So I'd put them on about 2-foot centers. If it's happy, it's gonna grow really well. If the soil is not, if it's too dry, it's just not gonna thrive. Okay.
Okay. Another question is, how tall is Delft lace?
Delft lace is it's a Dutch introduction that will probably about 2 foot tall. It's a little bit shorter. It's not as big as Tiketi superba, which is the big one. Let's see. All right. Fun
Well, you
little
have
furry creature.
small flowering trees.
Okay. Well, you have small flowering trees. We'll have a few. We don't offer huge sizes in those, but yes, we'll have some small flowering trees. That'll be covered in the next section on, I think April 7th. We're going to be talking about woody plants. So thank you for that question. Okay, I've got one that was privately sent to me. How much shade do the native azaleas require? Morning sun and afternoon shade, they'll do just fine. If you get them in real dense shade, you could sacrifice some of the blooming, which is why you grow them. So yeah, if you can find a place where light penetrates the canopy of your shade garden, or it gets morning sun on the side of a house where it gets morning sun, then that's great.
Also tell them that Kristen put the link to the plant sale in the chat.
Kristen Rambo has put the link to the plant sale in the chat. And then comment from Dale Engelberg about his Edgeworthia. Last year was not a good year for the Edgeworthias, but last year was not a good year for a lot of things. But after the Edgeworthias were encased in ice, they have bloomed and they are fabulous. So ours look great here at the Dixon and are perfuming the air and are just really a nice plant. So we'll talk about those in the woody plants, and we should have those in the sale.
I have a question. I'd like to know, I have a backyard that takes in a lot of water. And so my yard for maybe a week, week and a half after good rains will stay quite moist. Are there plants that will survive that flower? I have trees in my backyard. I'm looking for something.
It
down low.
eventually dries out some though, correct?
Yes, yes.
There are a fair number of ferns. Sensitive fern would be a good fern that would work well. That'll actually take, if it stays really moist, it'll take a lot more sun. The Farfugium you might try. The tractor seat plant that we talked about, that might be something to try. The Astilbes like some moisture. They like some moisture as well. And you could combine those with some hydrangeas that don't seem to mind wet feet seasonally anyway. Some of the irises are good. You could do, we'll talk about some of the sun irises. Dwarf crested iris would not do as well as, say, Siberian iris or the copper iris. Both of those would take that really well. There's some other ferns that would do well. You know, a lot of ferns are considered plants that like those wet feet. Maybe we could indicate on the list, or if you find me during the plant sale, we could go down the list and look at some other things that might do well in the seasonally inundated. I know there's a lot of calyxes that would do well in that situation as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I hope it's kind of weird to do these virtually. I feel like I'm talking to myself. There's no audience feedback or response. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to the day when I can have you all in the same room and we can have this lecture, because I feel like there's a little bit more of an exchange, and it's a little bit more personal that way. So anyway, thanks for coming. Hope to see you at the plant sale, and hope to see you at the next Munch and Learn. So,
Hey Dale, we have one more question about signing up for the plant sale from Betty. And
okay.
Betty, I will put that I'll put that link in the chat, so you'll be able to access it from there.
Okay.
Thanks again to Carolyn Brown and Linda Edens and all the Mad Potters, and thanks to all my colleagues here at the Dixon that dragged me into this new technology. So anyway, all right. If there are no other questions, I guess we'll adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very, very informative.
Thanks a bunch, Dale.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dale.